Do you have a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
What's it called?
Unfucking Midlife.
So it's the same as the Substack?
Yeah. It changes names with me.
Unfucking Midlife?
Mm-hmm. I'm not doing it as I'm doing like one recording a month. I might start plopping in some extra stuff. I used to record weekly.
I try to...
And it just became a lot
It's...
between writing and that and all that other stuff. As they call it, content producing. It was just feeding a machine for a
I
while.
was spending like 15 hours a week editing.
Yeah.
And CapCut and file, and then I finally was like, no, I'm outsourcing all of this.
Good for you.
I'm actually going to start like building out the Ronin 6 thing into its own media company.
Oh,
so that'll save a lot of time and effort and energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when you're 48 and have ADHD and you're not married and don't have kids, you just jump into the entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah. That resonates. The ADHD, not having kids around. I think part of my, I don't want to call it a problem, but one of my situations that I find myself in a lot is like trying to do it all and like being behind the scenes instead of being in the forefront of my brand or whatever it is I'm doing. Like if I'm, wanting to work with clients, I'll get caught up in creating the content and learning how to do a podcast and the marketing of it all. Just love that. I will nerd out for hours and days on it and then be like, okay, but you actually don't get paid to do that part. Even though it is marketing.
Right.
But it's like, I want to sit in those weeds and take hours editing and cutting and grabbing clips. And it's like.
I love learning new things. And it's always really, I'll do the same thing. Like I'll just go like, I spent like a weekend on YouTube and Reddit just learning how to do AI prompts like more efficiently.
Yes.
Just so that. Yeah. But it did help me later to know how to do all those things so that when I did start hiring the people to do them, I knew how long it should take, how much it should cost, versus like if I went to a mechanic and they're like, you need a new alternator. I'm like, okay.
Sure. And they're like,
right?
It's X amount, and you have no idea.
I have no frame of reference or how much time or labor should really go into that.
Yeah. Every part of the work that I do, I understand and can do at any time. And I know what it's valued at. And there is a lot of value in that. You're right. But there's also like a way for me to kind of hide in those weeds. For sure.
That's called avoidance.
Yeah, 100%.
What are you avoiding?
Everything. No, I'm just kidding. I was reading, I was thinking about being an empty nester now. And I hope that I say this in a way that doesn't make, like, I don't know how it's going to sound coming out. It's the first time I've said it out loud. Being focused on my kids, like most parents, you don't realize until they're gone that it's like you were avoiding. It gave you an out. It gave you an excuse to maybe not look at some of your own things that you needed to address and focus on, because it's like, oh, I don't have time for that part of me in my life. I need to focus. They need me. I need to be doing this. And as soon as they moved out, it was just very clear some of the things that were like, oh, it was almost like a scapegoat or an excuse of like, oh no, like even going out. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I can't do that. I need to be home with my kids tonight. Oh no, you can't come in. My kids are here, because I maybe didn't have even the power to say no on my own. Just period. It was always like this fallback of I'm a mom,
and it's held in such high regard that no one will question it.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. And then they're gone, and you're like, oh, I guess I need to figure out my own stuff, look at my own problems. Again, situations. I'm trying to really refer to problems as situations. And address those things and not, because I don't have that excuse, I can't micromanage them the same way I was.
My mom is kind of, she's fine now, but so many years before my dad died was just about her taking care of him. That when he finally passed and it was time for her to move on, she was like, I don't have friends. I don't, what do I do? Not that she doesn't have friends, but like she didn't have a routine of other people that she interacted with on an everyday basis that weren't somehow tied to caretaking for my father.
Yeah. It can be very all-consuming.
Yeah.
And you can easily identify with it because it's the quote-unquote right thing to be doing. So it's who you become. And then without that identity, you're like, who am I?
Has that insight found its way into your writing at all?
A little bit. So some of the things that I touch on are like the attachment of my kids and letting go and letting them, like, for example, feel their own pain and hurt and not try to like protect them from that because A, I can't, B, it's not about me.
Right.
And so I do touch on those things. They're also at an age and stage in life where they don't want to be a part of my conversation. And I've become very respectful of that. And I think it was in high school, their high school years, where they're like, I don't want to be on Instagram. I don't want you to post this. Or, I was talking about sex positive things and then looping our experience in a way that I thought was honestly at the time healthy and as an example and good so other people could learn. And it was very uncomfortable for them. And when they finally got to a place where it was coming, for the first no's just seemed like they were being like bratty kids.
Yeah.
Right. And then it was being articulated in a way where it was like, oh, this is actually you being independent and telling me how you feel about something in your own experience, which this is your experience. And I'm like centering us in a way or myself in it. And that's not cool. It's not consensual is what I realized.
It's interesting because art is always inspired by our lives. And I've even heard comedians talk about this where like everything is content or everything is copy. And it was like Bert Kreischer or something, like his daughter was like had her period in school and like he brought that into his comedy act and she was like, Dad, like that is something that like was personal between you and I, and you just told it to like 3 million people on Rogan's podcast.
Right.
So it's like in that creation of the content or the art or the craft or what.
Yeah, I've learned to ask, and that's amazing. It's such a simple. It seems so duh. Like, of course, just ask. I was even doing that in my writing when I wrote for Tribeza for a few years as like their relationship, quote unquote, expert. And we can touch on expert if you want a little bit, but I would make references to my experience with other people or friends' experiences. Like someone wrote in about, what do I do? I know that this man's having an affair on my friend. Do I tell this person? And so I was like, well, I'll just insert when I had that experience. Well, I would get, I got a message from someone I knew that was just like, hey, being an example, even though it wasn't a direct name or, touching on all of the specifics, they read it and it hit them in a way that was really uncomfortable. And it was through those experiences of me doing that I started to learn, like, I gotta really look at what I'm putting out there and how it affects others, not just me, right? Even if it is someone affecting me. Now I'm like, another one was, I've had a lot of guys when I was writing and dating, they're like, oh, you can totally write about me. And then and then I would, and they're like, I wish you wouldn't have. And I'm like, well, you're the one.
Right.
But in hindsight, I can see how it's like, well, yeah, no, that.
Well, especially like when people want that, like you almost don't know if what you're getting is authentic or if they're being performative.
Right. Well, and right. And it is performative when you're putting some of these things out there. The whole point of telling these stories is to get people to laugh or to just, it needs to resonate, response, right? Yeah. So clicks or whatever. So it's like, oh, I see what I'm doing there. I'm using parts of my life to capture your attention. And I need to be more forthright in asking others in their involvement.
When did you know you wanted to be a writer? Or when did you know you were a good writer?
I wouldn't even classify myself today as like being a good writer. I would randomly put things out, say on Facebook or just like a blog and then put it on Facebook or write these long captions and people's feedback. That's where it was like, oh, you're a good writer. And I was like, I'm not a writer. I'm just dropping thoughts. And someone was like, because I was like, oh, it's very stream of consciousness. I'm not, it's not like formatted essays or anything. And someone was like, that's writing. That's a style. And I was like, oh. And I started to take it a little seriously with myself. I was just practicing. And then through chance and knowing people, someone connected me with the editor at Tribeza. And that, when I started putting that out there, was like, oh, I have deadlines.
Right.
Oh, I have someone like reading this and they're going to put this out there. And that was a shift for me. It was like suddenly like, oh, this is a responsibility. Like take it seriously. And so I started to, and then after that relationship, like 2.5, well, maybe 3 years of working with them, I got into a really great rhythm and then decided to just keep it going on my own on Substack. And because I didn't want to be censored.
The more you write, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like anything else.
Yeah.
Like if you're working out every day, it's easy to go to the gym every day. If you're, walking your dog every day, it becomes easier to walk your dog. And writing is, for me, I'll use I statements. I have found that by journaling every morning, that keeps it fresh.
Absolutely. Well, the thing that's most motivating for me in writing is that it keeps me very aware of what's going on up here in my mind, which is a lot. It's a lot. And so for me to be able to get it on paper, I can like start to shuffle through some of the noise and really center myself. And it's like been the greatest form of therapy that I've ever had contact with.
I've had the same experience because I think a lot of times it's easy for us to just kind of doom scroll our mental thoughts, like, and how bad is this, and what about this, and if then that. But putting it down on paper, makes it real.
Absolutely.
And once it's written, it can be managed.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, maybe this isn't so bad.
Yeah.
I also love being able to go back and look at old things that were totally consuming. And be like, that was such an easy fix. Like, why didn't I?
Do you keep all of your journals and everything? It's interesting. I'd gone back and read some of mine. This was like after some point during pandemic times, maybe like 2021. And it was like if I was to leave behind my legacy of thinking, like if someone could go open up a treasure box and it's all of Ashley's thoughts after she's long been gone, I was like, this is like a People magazine gossip column. This is not good. And the pattern of seeing just about the dating and the mother stuff and all of these things that were just rinsing and repeating. And that's when I started to get really more active about it, where it was like, okay, identify the first thought, and I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I am absolutely going to change these thoughts. And and I am responsible for my second thought and my first action. And now that I have awareness over this, and like I said, the more I read it, I was like, I don't want to sound like that. I don't want to be this woman who thinks this way. If you could see what's going on here, that's not how I want to be perceived or remembered. And I burned a lot of those papers and those experiences. Because the truth is, like I said, it's a pattern. I can make contact with that at any point and know exactly what it is. It's the second thought that I want recorded, maybe even the third after I've evolved a little bit further, hopefully, that I want recorded.
Interesting. I never delete anything. One of the best pieces of advice that anyone ever gave me was, whether it was like writing a book or doing anything, was write every day, whether it's just a stream of consciousness or if you're working on a script or a screenplay or a book and you have a scene in your head, just write that scene. Doesn't matter if it's, and then the next day, just write a scene, or the next day after that, write a scene. And what I would find is that over time, oh, this kind of goes with that. I thought this was the beginning of the story, but it's actually the middle, or this is actually the middle of the story and not the, and so it kind of juxtaposed. But I have a document, like, so if I'm working, let's say, so like this next book that I'm writing, I have a working document for that book. And I color code it, like, this is good, and then this is something, but I'm not sure what it is yet. But I'll never delete it, because what they told me was never delete anything, because you'll never get it exactly right the second time.
Yeah.
But you can always build upon it.
Yeah.
But you can't reverse engineer it.
Well, to your, like, what you're writing about is something that you want to materialize. I would say that a lot of this was just...
Well, the book thing is something like that. The journal stuff is just...
Yeah. So when I went through, when I went through and tore out the pages to burn, there were specific ones that I kept. Like, I was writing down at one point conversations with my mom. And she has since passed. She passed away after that. And those are things I'm not ready to touch on or look at necessarily, but I'm like, I know not to get rid of that, even though it hurts, and even though it's like some of those muddied thoughts that I did later evolve from or move on from and let go of. I'm keeping that, because that is something that perhaps one day will be touched on. But some of the other stuff I'm referring to is just kind of, like I said, it's kind of like a People magazine gossip column of Ashley's existence into her 40s, which is like, ugh.
Did you always write about relationships? Like, even when you were like commenting on the blogs or what was the first thing you ever Do you remember the first thing you ever wrote?
Well, I think the first thing that I wrote that got attention from others, what was it called? It had something to do like the unsexy side of entrepreneurship. And it was a blog I wrote when I was running my business, Teddies for Betties. And it was me touching on, you know, it was a moment of just being very real and vulnerable and honest about how difficult it was to be behind the scenes of something that people thought was so attractive and so successful and really appealing. And it was anything but that at the time.
What was Teddies for Betties?
Teddies for Betties was a concept I came up with in 2008. It was a sex toy lingerie shop. And I was living in Hawaii. And I've always kind of been the mind of ideation and ideas and trying new things and wanting a business. And I came up with this, and it was like no one was selling sex toys and lingerie where I was. And
Interesting.
yeah, well, I was on an island, and so it's like
that can limit
and this
resources.
was the early aughts, and not
there wasn't Amazon.
No, we didn't have any of that, but it was driven by this.
What was the big thing back then? Like Fredericks of Hollywood or something? Like,
I wouldn't even know. Like Victoria's Secret.
Okay,
for sure. Victoria's Secret has been everything since I was like high school. But I was driven by this. I just want to have fun. Mm-hmm. I just want to have fun, and the flip. There's no matter what job you have, there's always going to be a very unfun side. No matter how sexy and cool it is. You're gonna.
I did an interview yesterday. Like, what's like when you were like doing like security work? What was the coolest part? And I was like, or what is something that like people don't realize? It was like just how boring it is. Because there's gonna be that shot of you like on the red carpet or on the runway or on the movie set, but a lot of that time is spent like in a hallway outside someone's
like by yourself waiting,
or just like you're talking on the radio to the guy in the car. Like, any movement? Nope. Okay. Another hour. Any movement? Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like 90% boredom and 10% fear.
Oof. My son, what did he say today about his job? It's like 90% waiting, 10% working. Because they set up for shows. Mm-hmm. And so they come in, they put in all the equipment, they get everything ready for the musicians and for the audience to hear, and then you wait. Mm-hmm. And then you unload.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of waiting. So that post that I put out, it was just identifying, and I didn't realize like that it was touching on that. So even though like the name, like that's the funniest part about writing is you spill your guts, and then other people's feedback of this thing.
Interesting.
It actually informed me of like, oh, I had so many people reach out to me.
So what did like 12-year-old you want to do?
12-year-old me, so that would have been middle school. I was living in a very small town of like maybe 200 people.
Mm-hmm. Where did you grow up?
I moved around. I actually went to like
military abroad,
15 schools in 12 years.
15 schools in 12 years.
Some of those were repeats, like going back to.
Right.
But my parents were divorced. My mom was raised in the military. My grandfather was in the Air Force, and my uncles were. But with my grandparents, they moved. My grandmother was in Germany. My grandfather met her there. So my mom was born there. Mm-hmm. And then back and forth between the states. And so I think that was maybe just kind of hardwired into her. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to some mental illness and other things that developed over time, she was always running and from one place to the next. So due to that, my dad was at times kind of intercepting and keeping me with him. And eventually at 17, I ran away and moved in I got emancipated from both of them, and then moved in with another family and finished school, and then moved after that to another city. But a small town Ashley at the time was wanting to be anywhere and anyone else, probably.
Right. What about like when you graduated high school? Did you have a plan for your future?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had a lot of plans. I had a lot of ideas, but I didn't have the support or the understanding of how to like do those or execute them. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I was living in Cloudcroft, New Mexico after I graduated, and was like, "Oh, I'll go live with my friend in Phoenix, and I'll go to college where she's going to college." And then my friend from earlier high school years in Tucson had reached out, and he was like, "I'm living in Seattle and I'm going to start a band, come visit." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go see you for 6 days in Seattle from New Mexico and then go to college." And I got up there, and he's like, we were drunk at the Cha-Cha Lounge, if anyone's ever been to Seattle. And he's like, I've been in love with you since we were teenagers. I was 19, so still, we met I was 14. And I think we should get married. I think you should stay here and we should get married. And I was like, I think you're right. That's a great idea. And
you make such great decisions at 19.
Oh my God. Yeah. So that's an example of like what I had no idea what I was doing, except for I was partying very hard.
Mm-hmm.
I was drinking and using a lot of drugs. And I knew after 9 months of being in Seattle that if I stayed there, I was going to die. I had that was a complete resonance within my body.
Was this like during like the grunge scene? What was the scene like?
The ends of it was 98, 99. So Modest Mouse had just like broke loose, and that was a very big deal. And it was also something that was for me. I wanted to get as far away from that sort of feeling of coolness. Like you had to know the music and the scene. It was like a glimpse for me at the time of like, oh, I'm not really a part of this thing that people are like really into, like truly, right? And
it's like the music version of LA.
Yeah, and my ex is a very incredibly talented artist, a musician, and they were all very like doing that thing, and it was like I was just kind of there, and very fucked up, and very lost. And my family was trying to get me to come back home, and I knew I couldn't go back to those same places because I knew all the people there, and I would just keep using. And so I got a one-way ticket to Maui at 19, and I had an uncle out there, and I was like, I'll go there. I'll get as far. I just pulled a geographic, thinking there's no drugs there that I can find. And God, I mean, you're an addict, you're going to find anything. And I
probably more drugs on an island.
Oh, I don't know why I was so shocked. I don't know why I was so shocked.
How else are they coping?
Right. And that's actually a lot of people go to island life to escape. And but it was the most incredible decision that I followed through on. It changed my life.
Well, that's the genius of Mike White's White Lotus whole thing is that, you may go somewhere different, but your problems came with you.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I've learned that, moving around so much, it was like, and anywhere you go, you're still with yourself. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, being on an island did give me some massive paradigm shifts. I was exposed to a culture and a life, or lifestyle, I should say, that I didn't grow up around in the Midwest or in the Southwest. I never saw people in their 40s healthy, surfing, exercising. It was when you're 40, you're old and tired. Literally that's what you were told and that's what you saw. And
I remember like being a kid and like my uncle was like turning 30 and I was like, that's so old.
Yeah.
And he was already like balded, beard gutted. And
yeah. And
like,
it wasn't like that out there. People were surfing and exercising and eating in different ways. And I was exposed to that very early and I tapped into it. And I got removed. I did remove myself from the drug thing. The girl can leave the party never leaves the girl. I've touched on it a couple of times throughout the years. Drinking stayed because that's so normalized. Mm-hmm. But I met someone within 6 months, and he was much older than I was, and I attached myself very quickly to that relationship and became a mother very, very quickly. I was 20 when my first child was born. And then 23 when my second came. By the time I was 25, I had like mortgages and 2 kids, and I was selling real estate and wearing Tommy Bahama. And I was like, I joked that I was like, I was 40 at 20 something. I was very serious, very serious, which is what I had to become at the time to remove myself from the person I had been. Yeah. But she's a very different woman than I am today. Is
it true that the lifestyle in Hawaii, I've been all around the world, but I've never been to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. It's the one place I'm kind of saving to share with someone special. Is it?
I just want to say you're special enough to share that with yourself. I just got to say, like...
Thank you, but I have traveled so much by myself.
Yeah.
Either like in advanced prep, like I have seen the world with me and some like foreign minister of interior.
Yeah, I get that.
Touring the catacombs of something because someone else more important than me was going to show up a couple days later. Mm-hmm. And so at one point I had this map on my wall in my condo in DC, and I had like, this is where I've been with the military, and this is where I've been with government, this is where I've been with blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, at that point I'd been like to like 100 and probably 40, 50, 150 some countries. I'd been to all 7 continents. I'd seen all the 8 wonders of the world. I was like, what is left for me to like experience? Like what?
Yeah.
Go on like a honeymoon or
Sure.
right? And like it was Hawaii and I think Thailand. And I was like, saving those 2. And then like literally just because the gods like to fuck with me, I was in Thailand. I was in like Pattaya like 2 weeks later. I was like, okay, just saving Hawaii then.
Yeah.
But I literally turned down a whole bunch of assignments in Hawaii.
That
would have been pretty,
that is
pretty
very,
cool.
That will be very special for you.
But everyone who goes says it's just like, it's slow.
It's so incredibly slow. And, you know.
Like, there is no sense of urgency.
None.
It's just.
Yeah, you're on island time is a very real thing there. And I thought island time would exist on all islands. So when I refer, and I actually want to not just call it island time, the aloha spirit is something that is very real there, and it is different on other islands. As I was saying, I
other
thought,
islands of Hawaii or other islands like
outside of like the Caribbean or something.
Right.
I've
the
been
BVI or
I've been there, and I just had this assumption of like, oh, it'll just be like that. And then it wasn't at all. And I was like, maybe because there's no surf culture or something. And I kind of analyzed it. And I was like, oh no, you're in the most isolated place in the world in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And the aloha spirit, like the people there and the energy is, if you're not meant to be there, it'll kick you out. I'll tell you that. And then if you're supposed to be there, like it's going to cradle you and swaddle you up. And it's just so incredibly beautiful. And I'm so grateful that I had 10 years there because it did sort of, I would say, rewire a good part of like, as we sometimes call these things technology, what I was downloading out there was powerful. I became a mother there. I grew up in many ways there. It's like what I would refer to as like my birthing place, my home. And I became a runner there. And that's been the most significant thing in my life, next to probably mothering, is learning, because the runner is in me to want to go, to leave this relationship, to leave this place, to get out of here. And I can go work that out in my body on a run and go home and go back home. And
do you
home
still
to self.
Ground yourself that way?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I run probably.
Austin's a great running town.
I'm obsessed. The trail is my church, and I run to the Capitol a couple days a week. Yeah.
Did you do the 10K last week?
No, I haven't done any races in a little bit. I think the last, and I don't race.
I don't understand that 10K is really a race. I mean,
well, I think some people do take it pretty seriously. It's one of the more
people
competitive.
Take everything seriously.
Yeah,
you can name anything, and there's someone who takes it seriously.
Yeah, I think the Cap 10K though is one of the most.
It's very popular.
Very, like we have the most runners come in for that one. But I haven't. Yes, and I do take it seriously when I get out. I did a turkey trot in South Carolina in November, and I even was in a costume.
Isn't that a prerequisite?
It should be. Yeah. I was hot AF, but I was like, just sprint, like something just flips on sometimes. You're like, this is a family-friendly event, Ashley. Like, what are you doing?
It's called a trot.
It's a trot.
People are literally walking.
My boyfriend was like, that bell went off and you were just like gone. I was like, I don't know. Sometimes that just happens. You just got to run with it.
And work off dinner.
Yeah. Or get ready for that dinner. But I love running. I do. I've had a love-hate relationship with it. It's been one of my longest commitments I've ever made to anything. Mm-hmm. And it's proven for me to be one of the just, I must do it. It's my medicine. It's my antidepressant.
Did you go right from Hawaii to here?
Mm-hmm. One-way tickets. Yeah, one-way tickets.
You just love getting flagged by TSA.
I don't fuck around. When I decide on something, I'm trying now to hit pause before I make just just decide and then hold off on that action for a second, like just wait and maybe do some research. At the time, the motivator was a massive life circumstance and change that my kids and I experienced, which was I'd been divorced for probably a year and a half, and their father passed away. And when that happened, the first thoughts were, this island is so supportive, this community is so here for us, I will never leave. And within a matter of weeks, I was like, there's no way in hell we can stay out here. I've got to get us out of here.
What was it?
It was this feeling of everywhere I went, it was my story. That's who she is. I just felt that so strongly that I wouldn't be able to remove myself from that. that their dad had died, and that's who we would be. And but again, that instinct to run without really knowing that that's what it was. But I was like, I can't raise my kids out here. We're too far from family. Mind you, it's a family that I'm not even that close to, but I'm like, we need to be closer to family. And I was seeing someone at the time who was from San Antonio, and we had talked about visiting Austin and going to ACL. And one night I stayed up all night until like literally 5 a.m. looking at Austin. And by the time he woke up, I was like, I want to move there. And he said, well, let's go visit first. And I was like, I'm getting one-way tickets, and I understand if you don't want to go, but I won't have a long-distance relationship, and I'm taking my kids and we're going. And he's like, I guess we're going. And we moved here in 2008. So it was like 6 weeks later. Or no, a couple months later, August. So April to August, because Chris passed away. It'll be this week, 17 years. And that's my impulse to just go 0 to 60 is something that in my 40s and my unfucking midlife pause is to not do that. To just, it's served me in ways, but in other ways it hasn't.
So was the Teddies for Betties born in Austin?
It was born on Maui in my basement.
Okay.
And then I came here with it and I didn't really. Oh,
right. So it was an island.
Yeah. And well, what was great during my 6 hours of research before this major life decision I made, I came across this place online called the Second Street District. And the W hadn't opened yet. But I was like,
what was Austin like in 2008? I got here in 2012, and it was
probably a little similar. It was very, from what I've experienced, very community, family, recreational. A lot. I don't see the road bikers like I used to. I'm sure they're all still road biking. Like Lance Armstrong was very influential at that time. There was a lot of cyclists and a lot of cycling going on, myself included. Running. That's still, I see it because I'm in it. I don't know. It's just, there was just more of a community recreational. And I want to say, I still believe that's all very much here.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's changing, but it's
changed.
Still here.
Yeah. We had music and we had some restaurants. It's the way we are. I mean, our ACL festival now is such a perfect example of like, that was like a family
the really good
forward.
Restaurants were like the restaurants that had been here forever, like the Magnolias and the Franklins and the people who had established themselves. But there was no like Uchi.
No. What?
In 2008? No, that was like 2010,
Uchi was
11?
Here.
In 8?
Yeah, maybe not Uchi Co., but I think Uchi might have, at least 2009, because I believe we went there for my birthday.
When did he was on the 8th season of Top Chef, right? And then it was like the next year too? Don't quote me on that.
Oh, I don't remember. But I believe Uchi Co. opened up later on. But like Perla's had opened in 2010. And that was, such a great, I've had a renaissance with that recently because it just.
Was Rainy around then? Had Rainy become a thing? That was like early 2011, like when the 2012, bars, right?
The houses were the bars.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
the original Luster Pearl.
Yeah. That was all
we went
there.
to, I think I did like a New Year's Eve party, but like the Lone Survivor crew, like when they did that movie, like the party was there because like Taylor Kitsch was still living here. I was like, I remember seeing that it was like, oh, this is really cool. Like there was old homes and like the back bedroom's a bar and the living room is
super fun.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
It's completely changed.
Completely. Yeah. High rises. And because I have been here so long and seen the change, and there was a period where I was like, once my kids graduated, my commitment was to give them one town, one experience.
How old? So were they like in middle school, elementary school?
Like 5 and 8.
Okay.
So they started kindergarten and second grade here.
Yeah. So Austin's their home.
Yeah. They have such a strong community of people they know here. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for that for them.
That's great.
Yeah. I love that.
Was that difficult to pivot the business from Hawaii to Austin?
Well, it wasn't a retail store or anything. I was literally like sex on wheels, where I was going to people's homes and setting up and doing like parties in their houses and selling things and in my basement.
And then they would like take orders and then you'd have that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I bought a bunch of inventory and could like just sell it there. And then when I moved here, it was also the recession. It was like 2008. So
right,
like,
the collapse was pending or had just happened.
Yeah, so it was like, get a job, figure it out. And I did that. And then it just became really clear, like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to try to figure that out. And I did. So I opened up in a little house, because I don't want to get too in the weeds about it. It was difficult to find a lease because I was selling sex toys, and no one that was. In 2008, the Supreme Court overruled Texas saying you can't police people and fine them for having sex toys or selling them. But that was that's still written
in the law.
Law. And I didn't know that. So as I was getting told no for business insurance and I'm getting told no for leases, I was like, I don't understand. And I took it very personally. I thought it was something against me, not realizing like the stigma, the real stigma around sexuality and sex toys. And but someone took a chance on me, and I had a little house on South First Street because Second Street was like, sorry, girl, we just are not. And then when it opened,
First Street has always been like the little street that could.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
And there was
they want to be South Congress so bad, and they just can't.
There was one man in particular there that owned a lot of real estate and a lot of real estate around town, and he's just the coolest guy, and he incubated a lot of us. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's been really incredible. So yeah, I opened there, and then I invited these other people, these developers, to come and see what I was talking about, because I didn't think they were getting what I was saying. Mm-hmm. And when they came in and saw my concept, they were like, oh, we would love to have you on Second Street. And so a year and a half later, I opened up on Second Street.
Well, it was Teddies for Buddies on Second?
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, it was awesome. I opened up at the same time as the W Hotel. So it was just like such a fun... I mean, the city really felt alive at that time for me, partially what I was doing, but also there was like a shift in that time. It was 2011, 12, around then. Yeah. And it was just a beat.
I got here happening. Like right after the W opened.
Yeah.
That was like the place you went.
Yeah, that's where you went. So I was there, and then I had a second store at one point up at the Domain Rock Rose when they opened up that area.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, but it was also very stressful.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And so it was while running that store that this sexy side of, or the non-sexy side of entrepreneurial.
Side of entrepreneurship came up.
Yeah. Was it just the vacillation between I'm totally fucked and I can't, this is amazing, and I'm totally fucked and this is amazing?
Yeah, well, it was mostly I feel fucked. I had people come in that invested and wanted expansion.
What's the entrepreneur? It's not Elon's quote, but Elon championed it. It was kind of like being an entrepreneur is akin to standing out on the edge, looking out into the abyss and chewing glass.
Oh God, I haven't heard that,
eventually you learn to love the taste of your own blood.
Yeah.
It's like,
that sounds about right. Yeah. I was just so overwhelmed and consumed with, I hadn't processed my kid's father's death very well. Mm-hmm. I had quit drinking in 2012 because I thought that was the problem. And
was that a choice?
Yeah. Well, I was on my knees about it. So in some ways, it was almost like I don't have a choice. I've got to remove this from my life. And nobody around me thought I had a problem. No, and it wouldn't have appeared that I had a problem. Like my alcoholism doesn't manifest outwardly or express itself in a way where you're like, oh, that's a problem. Unfortunately, it's a very internalized experience. And I had it, like I mentioned, my mother's mental illness. She was an addict and an alcoholic, and that manifested and expressed itself in such an obvious, you couldn't miss it. You were like, and so there were people around me that wanted to reinforce this idea that you don't have a problem. Your mom has a problem. You're not your mom. You're not your mom. You're not your mom. And it was almost like this, I felt like I was being gaslit, it's such a crazy experience, I think, for people who struggle with alcoholism or addiction, substance abuse. You so desperately want someone on the outside, maybe at times, not for everyone, to tell you, you're right, this is a problem, because you can't accept it for yourself. But then there are those who everyone's telling you, like, that's a problem. And you're like, I don't have a problem. So it really is like,
it's a catch-22.
Yeah, it does depend. But at the time, I was just consumed by the stress of being a single mom, the stress of having this business.
Which is basically another kid.
Yeah. And not making any money, not the pressure of like, they have no one else, I have no one else. And it was a lot. It was just so much, even though now I can see the people that really were rallying and around me and trying to support me. But at the time, I couldn't see that. I couldn't see it clearly at all. And even though, like I said, I didn't drink for over 5 years.
Wow.
Convinced myself actually through that. I was like, oh, clearly it wasn't alcohol that was a problem, because I still feel all these other things, but I feel that I won't abandon my kids if I were to drink today. This was my thought after those years of not. I feel that my business won't change if I were to drink today. Nothing's going to change if I drink today, because nothing's changed. So it wasn't the drinking.
Right.
And
so what was it?
Emotional insobriety. I had a lot of shit to work out that I couldn't even go close to. So that avoidance, I had no idea. Just, we weren't talking about trauma years ago. And I was raised of like, life's hard, get a helmet. You don't cry about it. That's, like, you work hard, and maybe for nothing, but you work hard.
Our entire generations.
Yeah.
That was what was modeled for us.
Yeah. And the people around me, it was just, there wasn't room for that. And so even though there might have been a little self-reflection, it wasn't that deep. Like I'd started to kind of go to therapy, but even then it was, how self-indulgent to sit here and talk about your problems. Like, look at your life, get it together.
Right.
So yeah.
You can afford to take 2 hours out of your day to talk about your problems.
Yeah.
What a champagne problem.
Yeah. And, focus on your kids, focus on these other things. And some, some of that was true, like focus on your kids and figure these things out. But it eventually circled back for me in a very, very subtle, it was a very subtle storm. I spent 3 years drinking after not, and it was a very different experience, frankly, of my drinking. It wasn't what it had been in my 20s and 30s. It was not as outwardly like fun, maybe, or a lot. I wasn't consuming a lot, but the internal, again, the isolation, anxiety, some of that stuff. But I was convincing myself that like, I'm having fun. I'm drinking like everybody else. And
were you always drinking with others, or were you also drinking alone?
Well, this is why people didn't think I had a problem. I loved nothing more than sitting down on my sofa with a glass of wine and a book or a movie. And I could romanticize this like an abusive lover, frankly. Like I could talk myself like the same way that you would go back to that thing you forget, just how painful it was. Drinking in public was not my thing. Not because I was like this, like a, like so drunk at home alone. It wasn't that. It was my hyper vigilance. Absolutely, when I'm in public and people are drinking and partying, like my need to make sure you're all okay turns on, and I can't relax. I'm very stressed out. So like drinking was something in public that I found I couldn't really do because I was too worried about what might happen and are you okay and how are you going to get home? It was like this whole new experience that I hadn't had. And I think a lot of that was stemming from being the child of an alcoholic and an addict and needing to make sure that person was okay.
Yeah.
And so that shit was just coming on. And that's when I started to kind of be like, what is going on here?
That was comfortable for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then at home, I was like, oh, I can just like relax. Or I would host dinner parties. And like, and it's so sophisticated. We're pairing all these wines with
cheese and
yeah. So it felt like it just felt sophisticated and like this is what everybody does. And then, but for me, it like wasn't at all. It was just so dark and relentless inside my mind. And I woke up. It'll be 3 years this week. Actually, that I woke up. Thank you. But I also had this other crazy thing happening that it didn't matter. I could have 1 or 2 glasses of wine. I wasn't a big drinker. And I suddenly started like experiencing vertigo, falling over,
Interesting.
slurring my words. Yeah. People around me, my close friends, like it was kind of the inside joke that Ashley's a lightweight. And, but my body was rejecting it. And that became terrifying in a way that it was terrifying for 2 reasons, because it was like, I don't understand why this is happening. what's wrong with me? Am I allergic? I was like Googling. And then I had a doctor tell me I had really low blood pressure, which makes it very difficult for your body to process substances and narcotics.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's why this is happening. But it wasn't just that. I also was like, our brains and our bodies are so fragile. Like, this is crazy. I can't imagine abusing my body like this further. If I want to live another 45, 50 years, like, what am I thinking? And I had that thought, so I didn't drink for a little bit. And then I had one more night where I went out and it was like that didn't matter suddenly.
Interesting.
And I found myself drinking, and it was I was like, wow, where there was no control in that. Like, what the fuck just happened? I believed so wholeheartedly just 3 days ago that I'm not going to drink anymore. And then as if just out of nowhere. And it was just like, I don't have control over this thing at all. I don't have control over it. And you're fucking done. Like, you're done. Plus, like, once every 10 years, I'd end up like doing cocaine or something. And, if you want to delete that, I understand. But that was another thing that was like, I know, but it was like, you always find yourself in some bathroom somewhere, like and it's like, girl, you're done. Like, what's going on? Like, if your kids knew this, or if you knew your kids were doing this.
Well, I'll tell you, just on a little Spencer Coursen cocaine sidebar.
Yeah.
Having worked in LA with like all the celebrities and the VIPs and where there are mountains of cocaine, I was shocked to find how much more of it there was in Austin.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, is this like where it comes in?
You're
and
like,
then
oh,
it gets distributed? It was like,
it's back, but it's like, it's actually never gone anywhere.
Yeah.
But for me, like, when I get
if you're doing coke today with the amphetamine or the fentanyl that's out there, it was like,
yeah,
you may as well play Russian roulette.
Well, and that was the thing where it was like, what is going on? Like, how is it possible that you're doing this right now when you're telling your kids wholeheartedly in fear, please don't do that, please. And so that was another, just like, girl, you got a problem. Yeah. You've got a real problem. And like, that's okay. Just accept it and surrender to that whole idea, because this is not working for you, and it's not your mom's problem. And it doesn't matter if others don't think you have a problem. You know you have a problem. And that was like the greatest, moment of being like, oh, you were so wrapped up in everyone else gaslighting you, and there's no bigger gaslighter in my life than me. And on so many things.
Gaslighting yourself.
Gaslighting myself. And I think we do that to ourselves,
Yeah.
So that I was like, good, I'm done. And I've been like done. I lost the full desire to ever drink again. It's almost like I kind of like feel sick at the idea.
Yeah.
But again, some time went on and shit didn't change that much for me internally. I still felt like a mess emotionally.
When in this entire cycle of drinking, not drinking, drinking again, did you write the article about the unsexy side of being an entrepreneur?
Before I went back out and drank.
And what was the catalyst for that? Like, what was it? Just everyone saying, "Oh, it must be so nice to be an entrepreneur and have your own business and blah blah blah." And I was
making commitments and signing leases and looking and getting raising money, knowing that it wasn't going to work, and yet I was doing it anyway. And I felt very trapped, and I couldn't be honest about that. Again, another like, just pretend everything's okay. No one has to know. And so that's what that was. It was like, I knew that it wasn't going to work, but I had to make it work. It was all on my shoulders.
So what was it about what you wrote in that piece that resonated with so many people?
I think that just the real honesty of that, it is difficult. And I, today, knowing what I know about being in business for yourself, is that you're going to reach that place of it's not working many, many, many times 10. Like, it's going to happen over and over and
times
over.
10 to the power of 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not reaching that place, your business isn't growing and you're not growing. Like, you're going to reach that place. And for me, part of my, we'll just call it my ism,
Ashleyism.
Yeah, or my alcoholism, maybe, just whatever that is, just the way I'm wired was like, this isn't working, I need out, but I can't let people know that it's my fault. Everyone thinks I'm so amazing and I got to uphold this whole thing. And just burn it. I'm just burning it all down. Just burn it all down run, get out of here, and that's something today that I'm very aware that I do. I have exit strategies all the time and escape routes for anything and everything, relationships, commitments. And today I follow through. But back then, no way. And I didn't ask for help back then. Like I said, people around me were trying to offer it and were there, and I couldn't see it, and I wasn't going to ask for it. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I was very similar, and a friend of mine is very much the same way. And there was something on Instagram the other day. It was a guy like holding one end of a couch, and like the other end of the couch was like on an office chair, and he's like pushing it down the street, and it's like caption was like, "Tell me you have a hard time asking for help."
Yes.
It's like, yeah. I feel seen.
So seen.
I will be of service to everyone and anyone, and will anticipate the needs of anyone and everyone, but have a very hard time, even now, still asking for help.
I would like to think I was a person that was available to others to be helpful to and be in service of, and I wasn't. I've been there for my kids in a way that like I know through and through. I have no doubt about the mother I've been for my kids.
Yeah.
Again, going back to that, like as my out, it's like I don't have time for other people, including myself. I don't have time to be in service to what I need to do for me in some ways, which is very selfish, or for others, because I need to be there for them. And now I have the capacity to be there for them and others, and be less self-consumed, I think, and I hope.
Well, it's interesting because it's a selfishness disguised as selflessness.
Right. 100%.
Right. Until you realize that it's actually really difficult to serve from an empty cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you're not at 100%, how can you expect?
Right.
It's only when you're at 110% that you can give other people everything that they need.
Yeah.
Kind of like the champagne glass at the top of the tower.
Yeah. 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 There was a little victim-y martyrdom going on, I think, for me for a while. And there still can be. I have to check myself a lot, But today I have really great tools to spot check all of that.
How did those come about? How did that Batman belt get built?
Well, I think God works in what always seem like mysterious, funny ways. I always feel like it's a joke. I have this tattoo that says touche because I feel like I'm like, oh, you're fucking with me. That's, touche. I asked for this thing and then you gave it to me in a way that was just like, really? That's not what I meant.
Right. It's like I'm trying to think of the joke where it's like the guy asks for something and quite literally, and they.
Yeah, So like I said, after I quit drinking 3 years ago, and midway through that, I felt at my lowest. Insert life had gone, taken a few turns. My mom, I went back into her life after not being involved with her. I hadn't seen her in 12 years. And I was like, I need to go to the source of this wound and pain to heal that, at least for myself, or for her, we'll see. So I went back to that. That was very disruptive emotionally for me, very disruptive.
Well, that's the whole you can't go to the problem for the solution thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like going into the eye of the storm. My friend was like, you're on like a sober waska thing. And I was like, yeah, I've been terrified of ayahuasca. Anything you have to bring like a bucket to and toilet paper, I'm already like, but I might as well have had to bring those things to go visit my mom, because what was happening to me, it brought up everything. And
the energetic purging can be a very real
thing. And it was, she ended up passing away after that. And so what an incredible gift for her and I both. And what I went through was basically, yes, very much that. I went through every emotion and went full circle. And the cord was cut between her and I. True forgiveness and letting go, and again, acceptance of what had happened to her, and no blame. And but also could mourn what happened to me as a child, being born into her life, being her child.
Well, you were in Hawaii. What is the Hopopopo prayer? Hapa Popo?
That's so wild that you brought that up.
I love you. I'm sorry. Yeah. I forgive you. Please forgive me.
Yeah, that's so wild you would bring that up. Because I haven't thought about that. Yeah, but it was such a beautiful experience. I didn't understand my mom's addiction and the depths of it. And it's a very difficult thing when it's your parent. Especially, we have this idea that our moms and dads shouldn't be that way. They should be a certain way. And when I was able to remove who she should have been because she was my mom, and moms don't do that, quote unquote, and I just decided I'm going to go into this woman's life as another human, another person next to me, and just listen to her stories, everything changed. And I could see her from a different light, a very human light.
It's a perspective shift.
Yeah. When I wasn't, because I had us trapped in this box and we were both just struggling to be something we weren't. And when I gave her that opportunity to be herself, and it was great. But I also will say, I also was finally able to mourn being the child of her and feel that disappointment that I had told myself and her, no, it's okay. You were the mother you were to me that made me the mother I am to my kids. It was supposed to happen that way, which was a lie that I didn't realize. I was just basically just squashing down those feelings. And it was both, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, yes, this is exactly how that was supposed to happen. And that fucking sucked. Terribly.
Both can be true.
Yeah. So both were true. I held both. It was very freeing. And then she died. And it was like, what the fuck just happened? And I can't believe the grief that I felt mourning someone that I didn't get to have like that mother-daughter relationship with. I was floored.
Yeah.
So through that experience, I'm not drinking, and then I have this moment of I have never felt more done in my life. Like a numb done, kind of like, you know what? You've done everything. You raised your kids. You forgave your parents. You forgive. Like, what else is there left to do? There's nothing. I really reached this place.
Was this a suicidal ideation thing, or was this just like what's the point thing?
What's the point? Like, and I wasn't like, yeah. And there were just the thoughts of like, you can be done here. You can be done. And that was like, what? Wow. Like, what is so bad? And there were there's circumstances going on that were not great. And I was like, okay. Let's just have like we'll call it the come to Jesus, which is funny that it was that, because I sat on my couch and I was like, when was it time? I know. I was like, when was a time in my life, right? A time in my life where like things were hard, because life is, there's always gonna be a little bit of suffering here. That's part of the deal.
There's no joy without the suffering.
Right. But you still moved through life in a way that was like, we'll just call it productive, right? You were down and out, but you were moving through it, versus the last 20 years that have not been at all. Like, it's just been like one thing after another. And I was like, oh, yeah, I had God in my life at one time.
When was that?
In my early 20s. I was like, and that was.
So you're in Hawaii?
Yeah. And
was it God or was it spirituality?
I will say it was God at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was, I ended up a religious God. I started going to church. Okay. But in doing that, I was doing these prayers and meditations, and I felt this closeness to something outside of me in a way that I never had. And I was raised in the church, Catholic, and I never really got down with that.
I'm a recovering Catholic.
Yeah.
I'm a recovering Catholic myself.
Yeah. And my dad was very religious. And so like, fasting and certain things that went on, I wasn't resentful of it. I actually had a deep admiration for my father's like devoutness, where I'm like, wow, that man's on his knees every morning at 4 a.m. meditating and praying. And like, it's not for me, but cool,
I'll tell you, faith is not a gift I've ever been blessed with, but my dad was devout. Mm-hmm. And till he drew his last breath, had no doubt that he was going to heaven. Yeah. And I was just like, wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah. That's how I've looked at it. And even though it was like kind of used, I think it's used against people, pushed on us in ways that don't feel very healthy or positive. And I had those experiences, but they washed over me. But in this moment, it was like, in my early 20s, that pursuit of it was, I desperately wanted something in my life to change for me. And so I relied on the church and I got into it. And then I sort of fell out of the church part, but kind of kept this idea of God and a higher power. And when my ex-husband died, I can tell you with full certainty that it was very clear to me that there was something outside of me because of the events that happened before, during, and after. And it was not within, I was operating on another level. It sounds so woo, and maybe people will be like, she sounds crazy. But
it doesn't have to make sense for it to work.
Yeah, but I just knew, like, everything in my brain, it was as if we'll just say, like, whatever happens when you take psychedelics and all the noise dies down and you're just conscious. I was so conscious that I could hear what to do next. And I knew where to be. And it was the most fucking wild 72 hours of my life. It started with a dream that something was going to happen. And then the thing happened. And then I just went into this, like, don't move. And I just knew where to be. And he died. And I'll never forget that. Like, I was so closely touched by it. And I knew, wow, there is something greater outside of it. Like, we are all connected. I was like, whatever that vibration, consciousness, energetic thing is that people talk about, that's real. But again, he died in the 0 to 60. Put that away, take care of your kids, move to Texas, open a shop, get married, blow up your marriage, keep going to work, stop drinking. It just went crazy. And that morning on my couch, I was like, okay, you want to die. And what the fuck? And when was life hard, but not this bad? And it was like, oh, you had God in your life. And so I made a conscious choice right there. I was like, God, come. Okay, you've probably been here the whole time.
Hi, God, it's me, Ashley.
I'm here. I'm paying attention. Like, help. Like, tell me what to do. I'll listen to you. And then, like, the next day, I'm sitting with a friend, and we're at Barton Springs. And I was like, I want to find more people and friends and community of, like, who's not drinking. And we've just entered this really cool phase in society, I would say, that, like,
it's incredible.
Sober curious and just, like, natural medicines. And I'm so here for all of that, because when I first quit, it was, like, not cool. And so you didn't want to talk about it. And I was like, I want to hang out with people who aren't drinking and, like, rebuild a community. And I need to get involved in people's lives. I'm alone a lot. And she's like, okay, well, there's this California meeting of people who don't drink. And I was like, oh. She's like, yeah, let's just go to that and meet these people. I was like, that sounds cool. And so we're in this meeting, and then I'm listening, and I'm like, wait, this is an AA meeting. And she's like, yeah, I know. And I was like, what? I don't want to be in an AA. I had done AA before, not for me. And I just, like, slouched down. I'm like,
did you mishear AASCA, or did she say?
She just said this California style meeting, and my brain made this assumption of,
the
like,
California sober.
Like, yeah. And, like, people who don't drink, but maybe you're getting stoned, and that's cool for you. I love that. Like, you're all natural. And but so we're sitting there. I'm like, this is an AA meeting. Like, fuck.
Hi, my name's Ashley. Hi, Ashley.
Yeah. So there's just this, like, and then I listened to this, people are talking as they do in those meetings. And then this one guy starts speaking about emotional sobriety. And my ears just fucking perk up. And it was like he was reading from my diary, these feelings of otherness and needing a solution. And it had been, using so that we could feel better or get out of this thing or feel like I'm like you. He goes on and on. And then he refers to some book. He's like, it's like, it says in the book 12 and 12 on page whatever. And I was like, I don't know what that book is, but I've got to get that book. It's going to change my life. And that night I'd leave this AA meeting and I go home and I just have this thought. I'm like, I wonder if I still have my big book from when I was going to AA. And I go to find that. And next to it is this book that he refers to that someone had given me in 2014.
What was the book?
The 12 and 12.
The 12 and 12.
And it was just this, like, burning bush moment where I was just like, oh my God, like, this is what. And at the same time, I was like, wait, you want me to go to AA? I don't want to go to AA. Like, that can't be the answer. But I said, I'm going to commit to reading this 12 and 12 book. And every morning I opened up a chapter and it just hit me so hard that this is where you need to be. This is where you need to be going. This is where your community is. And this is not just your community. This is where you're going to connect with your higher power. You're going to learn how to do that here.
What is the premise of the 12 and 12?
It is basically a summary of the steps from AA,
12 steps.
of the 12 steps in the AA recovery program, for other people to understand what it is, whether you're in the program or not.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's, I think anyone would want to read it. It just breaks down how those work and what they're for and for who. And, alcohol and substances really are, for most of us, a solution to a deeper problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
what's for me?
Yeah. And so when I wasn't drinking those other 5.5 years, and I was going to AA meetings here and there, but I wasn't hearing solutions. I didn't know it was a spiritual program. And some people think it's a religious program, but it's a spiritual program. It's a higher power defined however, as you understand it, right? And so that could be that room of people. I call it God, just like, which could be good, orderly direction. It could be the great outdoors. It could be a group of drunks. I don't care. No one cares. But it's something outside of yourself, which any of us can, I think, use to get out of our selves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I didn't know any of that, though. I wasn't hearing it. I just heard differences. I went in that room and I was like, I don't have that problem. That's my mom's problem. But this go around, I started hearing the similarities. I started seeing myself, and I started feeling for the first time far less alone. And that's not to say I started making great friends. It was, I started connecting with people that were saying and feeling and experiencing things that I felt very isolated in.
Mm.
And it's one thing to quit using drugs and alcohol. For some people, that's all they need to do. And then for some of us, that's just the beginning. I had no idea how to take care of myself, even though I've been so self-reliant, taking care of myself since I was so little, and taking care of my kids and others and running that store. And I had no understanding of how to be around other people. I had zero emotional sobriety, like chaos, so impulsive, 0 to 60 on every decision. And the worst part about that is that, like I said earlier, like, I can have the best people in my corner telling me all the things right. True or not, I'm not going to believe you. I have this paranoia and, again, a default to just create chaos, partially because I grew up in it, and then partially because probably would have been I was just born this way. And this has given me the tools to learn to pause and breathe and just be and rewire that. I mean, it's wild to me. Now, I have this expression that I say, it's don't take the first think. Because my first thought about what you think of me, or what the audience is going to think of me, or just, that first thought of what my boyfriend's doing or what my kids are doing is crazy.
It's so funny you say that. I'm writing this book, and I'm kind of doing this mentoring what true modern masculinity means.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I say is when you're in an argument with your significant other, don't say the first thing that comes to your mind. Say the third thing, because the first thing is ego, and the second thing is pride.
Yeah. Oh.
And then the third thing is probably the best course of action.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that perspective shift from the female perspective. It's the first thing.
Yeah.
We've all seen those memes, he's probably thinking about that other girl. And then I see him as I wonder if I'm going to bench press 305 or 315 tomorrow.
Should I have a sandwich or a smoothie? I want to actually take back saying that my first thought's a crazy thought. It's this self-protective defense.
It's the ego.
Yeah. And it's not it hasn't worked for me. And in some ways I think it's good to be able to think fast, but learning to just pause in those thoughts and feel what's coming up for me. Because a lot of that, like you're saying, that ego, we're just reacting to these patterns and pain bodies. When my
Especially
partner,
when we're triggered.
Right. When my partner says something to me, that triggered reaction is not him, or because of what he said. It has nothing to do with him.
Nope.
But to have that awareness in that moment, was very difficult. And I mean, yeah, I've had to like learn to sit through hours upon hours, days, sometimes weeks of anxiety over one statement. My dad said something to me when my mom died. And it took me 18 months, probably. I was making coffee. This was 6 months ago. I was making coffee and it went through my head. I heard the conversation again, and I finally got what he meant. It took me it was like, first of all, I'm so glad I didn't say to that man what I wanted to say to that man in that moment, because I was hurt. And because that's not what he meant. But my perception of what he meant, wrapped up in my childhood of all the other shit, perceives that, right? And I was like, that only took 18 months. Only 18 months to let that go.
Yeah.
It happened this morning at the gym with my partner. And it's just wild to me how right we think we are and how icky that feels. And I watched my ego when it was like, okay, reach out and say, you're sorry for letting your frustrations leak into your moment. And the stubborn resistance that came through my body, that was just like, don't you dare. Don't you dare. He should not be acting that way. He should have this going on. This should be going on. That never would have happened if he was doing A, B, and C. And I watched it and I felt it. And then I looked at the other thing as I typed that sentence, because first I tried to call, didn't go through. So then I typed that sentence. I'm sorry for letting my frustrations leak into our moment. In the future, here's how I hope to manage that and my stress. And it's like you're at conflict with, within yourself. You're like, here's like two angels, like, or a devil and an angel. And that desire to just be like in conviction of rightness. But I know that the person I want to be is a person who's not like coming down hard on everybody around me for being human in their own experience.
But
right?
I also like hearing that he is also providing a strong enough masculine frame that can allow your femininity to flourish. That's
been the beautiful experience about this particular relationship.
Because like I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think a lot of people like mistake it's just a frame. It's also containment.
Yeah. Oh, it was so, and I thanked him for not getting angry with me and instead watching his experience and his pain body, as he refers to it, and as we do, come up and not reacting to it, and instead using communication. And even as he was doing that, I was very still much in myself about how frustrated and you. I didn't say those things, but I was watching it happen. And it's been liberating for both of us to be in a partnership where we can hold space for each other. I want to say first, we were very reactive to each other, like when our stuff started coming up. And I think it's easy for the feminine to say, you know what? The way that you're acting as the masculine as a man is not okay. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't raise your voice. You shouldn't do these things. And for me, because I don't do that unless like I have to be pushed really far to get, I'll cry before I get like angry, unfortunately. And that makes me mad that I'm crying when I just want to be angry and mad, you guys. I'm tough and I'm mad and you will be afraid of me. Instead, I'm like sobbing. But what I do in reaction is shut down, and I'm silent and I push away, which speaks very loudly in its own way. And I've not realized,
because avoidance and distance is.
Well, it's so easy for us to say, you're yelling, that's bad. You shouldn't be yelling. That's wrong. That's aggressive. Right. And I have my own way of being aggressive, but it's a quiet way. But it's just as aggressive and hurtful.
Yeah.
And I think we lose sight of that because it's not this external portray. And so when people around me get frustrated or yell, I'm like, I didn't realize until recently that there's a part of me, that conflict, that I was seeking out and provoking in my partner.
I ruined more relationships because my response to trauma wasn't to get mean or angry or violent. It was just to zero you the fuck out.
Yeah.
No questions, no
Yeah.
Delete.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's amazing, I realized, I was like, oh, so like you get loud and very active in your anger or your emotion, whatever we want to label it as, your emotion. And I just sit back and I'm like, you're the one who's, look what you're doing. You did it, not me.
Mm-hmm.
You did it. I can't be at fault for that.
Yeah.
I'm better without even realizing,
right.
But that's ultimately what it comes down to. Whereas I'm like, you don't know how to manage
I was the king of the covert contract.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't know how to manage your emotions. I do. And yeah, so I'm better than you. And wow, had no idea the conflict of which I have inside this turmoil and how it seeks out that in you and will provoke it and escalate it in ways that, like a ninja, frankly, because I want out. Ultimately, I just am looking for my out. And with this,
do you want out, or are you just probing the defenses to see if he'll let you go?
that game has certainly been there, and that was something today that I witnessed where I was like, something that I had done in the past is I won't reach out and communicate about this. I'm going to wait for you to do it and come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then that tells me you love me and that you care. And that's very manipulative. And we don't do that. We're not doing that.
Good. Because I this new book, I've interviewed like 500 women for it, and one of the things that they say is that it's not until they'll probe the defenses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how strong are you? Are you strong here? 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 And it's not until they do like a full 360 probe that they finally go, oh, he's safe everywhere?
Yeah. Yeah. I will, in the beginning, I think we're all looking for safety in our relationships, right? Especially when history has shown that you haven't felt safe, that people can't be trusted. And I communicated very clearly with him in the beginning. If we get into a fight and you just leave, my brain is going to just default to abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens. It's not personal. And I'm really, again, fortunate my person is always working on his spiritual fitness and using the tools. And so when we get into heated things, it's amazing. He's like, both of us right now are not in ourselves. This is not a good time for us to be talking. I think if you want me to leave, I'll leave. Do you think I should leave? And I'm like, I think you should leave. Like right now, you should go. And he's like, okay, just so we both just need to know. We're just taking a breather. But I'm going to call you. And we're going to keep talking about this. Mm-hmm. And it's like this reinforcement that he gives me to that signal, like, you're safe here. You're safe to be upset. It's not going to blow up. When we first started dating, we had a few things happen where, like, he's a startup CEO. His days are 14 to 16 hours long at times. Mm-hmm. He's grinding it out. And I had this, he's going to use work as an excuse. He's too busy. He's going to be too busy. That'll be his out. That will be his out. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't. And then we had this crazy health scare that he had experienced. And I was like, this will be his out. He's going to need to face this thing, and a relationship, he won't have time for it. And it wasn't. He didn't do that. And that for me was like, oh, this person's like serious. We're like in this, And so those were the early on signals of like his actions. Mm-hmm. Just kept showing, like he was showing up. And this is a man that I don't hear from, 8 hours, 10 hours of the day because he's working. And one part of me like really likes that. I love that. But the
remember when people would come home and be like, hey, how was your day?
Yeah.
It was because we weren't texting and updating and Snapchatting and Instagramming and
he's doing
memeing
his thing, and he
day.
should be doing his thing. I love that. And I want to do my thing. And we support each other in that. But in those early stages when you're dating and you don't hear from someone, you're like, is this person, do they have time? Are they interested? And it was his actions, and it's been his follow through. And when he says that I'm going to correct this behavior, his best attempts to correct that behavior are made. And both of us are actively doing that. And there are always defaults because we're human, and the programming is very deep, So like I said this morning, it was like witnessing this part of me. It's like, I don't want to tell him I'm sorry. I don't. I'm not. Get your life together. And it's like, bitch, you're going to get your life together. Like, this is so much of, I don't want our days. I don't want to leak my unhappiness and disrupt your peace. I don't. And I used to do that and like wait for you to reach out to me. And it's like, I don't want to play that game anymore. And I don't, it's because it doesn't feel good for anyone. And who am I to be so disruptive?
Yeah.
So disruptive. Most of my days and my work are really just about U-turns.
Say more.
I think it's something I learned with being a parent and then of course just any interaction with others. It's really easy to look at the people around you and see what they're doing wrong and see the way that they're behaving and how that's not working or how they're treating you and it should be differently. And I don't want to dismiss that there are times where it's like, it can be helpful to chime in with someone. And as a parent, it is my son the other day I was like, hey, I'm sorry I came down on you about that. I feel fear sometimes and my reaction, I don't need to be all over you. And I was like, that's not my job. And he's like, actually, Mom, that is your job. You're a great mom. And I want that. That's what I want from you. So we have an understanding there, right? Where I try not to do that, but.
Is he the older or the younger?
Older.
Yeah.
But
there's always a special bond there.
Yeah. Well, the both of them they're both really incredible kids. We're very close. But yeah, so it can be very productive for those of us to let others know, like, hey, I see maybe there's this blind spot, you're not seeing it.
But are you doing that to everyone?
Well, that's just it, where it's like anyone close to me, I'm like, I need to manage all these people because whatever, you're affecting my day. Like, and
is that an expectation thing? Because I'll say, and I ask that because one of the things that I had to work through in my own evolution was I was allowing other people how they showed up to dictate my emotional state.
Yeah.
And once I removed my expectation of others, I found myself to either be made aware or to be excited, but never disappointed. Because the only thing that I knew that I could control was how I showed up.
Yeah, there is expectation that comes up. I want the people around me to be able to be themselves. And if I have a problem with the way that you're behaving or being, if that's who you are in that moment, then I have a problem. I have a problem. And so that's when, like, that U-turn of turning in, coming back to me, like, what's coming up for me here? This person's behaving this way. Why am I feeling this way about it? What's coming up for me? And it's usually, if it's funny, like depending on the relationship or the person or the examples, it could be, with my son, for example, that's fear coming up for me because I don't want him to suffer. So that need to control and stay on top of that and micromanage and come down is, like, in my mind, protecting both of us and setting him up for success. And I need to be okay with this person's got to go through their life and experience these things and learn, and they're going to suffer. And that's for me to witness and also experience discomfort. And how do I manage my discomfort in people who I just love so much? I throw myself in front of a fucking bus for, these two kids of mine. How can I be in that discomfort of watching them go through their life experience?
I have also found, did you ever read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss?
I started that, and I just recently have come back to it because of a friend who mentors him, the attorney who's from here. What is his name? He's a big fan of him. But yes, I know who you're talking about.
He has one of the number one takeaway I have from that book is that when he's negotiating, and for those of you who don't know, he's a former FBI negotiator, hostage negotiator, not just an FBI negotiator, just negotiate a bunch of things. But he says, like, when someone says, whether it's an interrogation or a negotiation, or even just like in a relationship with friends or family, and they say something that either triggers him or usually it's when something that like is meant to offend him or is triggering him or he's not comfortable with how it went. He has a line that says, "I bet you had a good reason for saying that."
Yeah. Yep.
And so what it does is
I have that written in my notes.
It doesn't require him to take ownership of what you said. It requires you to double down on what you said or rephrase what you said. And he said many times what they said triggered me, but what was triggering me wasn't what they meant.
Right.
And so when I say, I bet you had a good reason for saying that, whether it was because I was being a hard ass or because I was doing this or because I was doing that, and I forced them to reinterpret for me what they meant, it gives me a better understanding of what they meant and how that impacts me.
Yeah. So these other examples of like, say, my boyfriend, if he says or does something in a way that I'm not thrilled about, it's often not that simple act that's happening in front of me. It's when I'm making it mean about how is this going to affect the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know how to put the dishes in the dishwasher the right way, like, are you even going to be able to take care of me later if something really bad happens? Or it's like this like little thing that we're attaching this whole other meaning to.
So much of our big T and little t trauma is so unnecessary just because the story we're telling ourselves is not true.
Right. Yeah.
Just not true.
It's not true.
It's not real.
Yeah.
Loading the dishwasher, how someone loads the dishwasher is not a indicator of someone's ability to provide and protect.
Yeah.
It just means they load the dishwasher in a way that you don't load the dishwasher.
But you're not doing it. Right. It's just a different way. And so...
Because there's a towel on a counter, okay? And people are washing glasses. I am someone who takes the glass and puts it so that the bottom is on the towel so that the air can circulate all around and get in and out of the glass. Other people take that glass and put it so that the top is up so that only the outside of the glass gets airy but doesn't circulate the air inside that glass at all. And every time that for some reason triggers me because I'm like, how are you not conceptually aware about how like airflow works and thermodynamics and blah, 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 blah. Like how you're just not a big picture thinker. And it's just like, no, their mother always put it down like that. And so that's how they did it. How it was modeled for them. It has absolutely nothing to do with them thinking about, and again, it's just a fucking glass on a towel.
Yeah, it is wild.
I also do this with toilet paper. If I'm in someone's bathroom and the toilet paper is going the opposite way, I will turn it around so it's facing towards me.
Yeah. But have you ever found like...
But that doesn't mean that person has will be unsuccessful in life. Because
it is amazing how quickly it means that though. Like that's exactly where my brain goes. Yeah.
I know that's a me thing.
Yeah. Well, that comes with awareness, understanding, age, and experience, right? Where you're like, these are just my things.
I could never date that girl. She likes Metallica.
I
like Metallica, by the way.
I think the head stuff that we place on other people is actually what does keep people disconnected and apart. I think often we have these long lists of like people need to know how to stack the dishwasher. They need to know where the toilet paper goes. And if they don't, like I can't be with them. And you're actually losing sight of like the deeper things that keep people together. And there's this resonance that happens between two people, a connection. And, to be completely transparent, when I met my partner, things that were on my absolute, I would not date a person who A and B and C. And when we met and we were introduced, so when he turned around and we locked eyes and like reached out to shake hands, I literally felt this surge in my body, and I heard go there. Like I wanted to go towards this person. My instinct is never to go towards a man. I'm just like very conditioned to like kind of keep my distance from men. And it was this wild like, and then my brain was like, he's in a community that you're a part of, and you don't date people in your communities because it looks like this, that, and the other. And he does this other thing, and you don't want anything to do with that. And I went home with it and I sat with that. And I was like, how ironic that the things that I've put on paper to say no to, that I'm defensive against, are actually like core parts of who I am. Core parts of who I am. And I just had a mental block of like, don't do that. And the minute and there's been other things, and it's been so awesome to watch. Like, there's a tradition in AA, and it's principles over personalities. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking a lot about that recently. And when I let go of judging all of these things about who I think you are or the way that you're behaving, and I get to the core of like your values and the foundation and your energy, that's where we connect. But we're so in our heads about like the things that others do or how they're dressed or what they listen to, and we just keep disconnecting and disconnecting. And for me, that's a safety net. The more I can disconnect from others and isolate, I can be alone. I can't get hurt. You can't leave me. There's no one left to leave me. I'm over here. I'm safe, right? And then you're like, why am I all alone? Nobody loves me. And it's just reinforcing that feedback loop. And so I've had to, like, within any relationship, it's been easy to forgive my kids on things. I understand. I've learned unconditional love through them. They have broken me in so many ways. Like, I have felt peak disappointment, peak frustration, peak anger. And the capacity in which I felt those, I thought, I will never get over this. And then I do. And they've shown me.
You will always love them more than anything they can ever do wrong.
Right. And I didn't know that was even possible. I finally, I grasped unconditional love when they were in middle school. And it became more difficult as they became teenagers to learn how to set those emotions aside or to experience them and not let them take over. But I did. And through that, I'm like, oh, so in theory, if I can apply that towards these two people, why not the rest of them? Why not? Because they're not my kids? Because they're not my partners? Actually, it's easier to apply it to the masses of population you don't know because you're not in contact with them. But when you get around your family and partners, everything just flares up, right? So it's, why can't I here? Why won't I? What is my resistance? And so that's a big leaning in for me. Like, personalities aside, what are the principles here between us? And it just helps eliminate all the noise in the mind and the ego and the pain body that wants to constantly keep us disconnected from others and in that story and whatever yours is, right? But that's just the learning. And I forget this stuff all the time. It's a remembering and forgetting,
Well, that's so true, because it's one of those things where it's there's always downloads and there's always insights and there's always, oh my God, that's such a great idea. But then it's the integration of it all.
Right.
So if we haven't integrated, we have to relearn it because clearly we didn't learn it well enough for it to be integrated.
Yeah.
I mean, countless times throughout my life have I heard the phrase, well, the worst thing that's happened to you is the worst thing that's happened to you. And it wasn't until like I was in therapy that someone said, well, the way he was framed to me in the context of the conversation was like, oh, fuck, how did I not pick up on that? But it was just, I wasn't ready to learn.
You weren't ready. Yeah. And that's okay too. Like, all in our own time.
Yeah.
All in our own time. I don't know what I'm thinking about. I remember the first time my son said no to me. He was like a toddler. And the world stopped for a second. Like, it stopped. Where I was like, who do you think you are?
You don't question
You
the
don't
queen.
know? What? Tell me no? And yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you just get broken down. It's what a gift to have people around you that will get you to a place of just like, I give in.
Yeah.
You win. And I let it go. And especially with the parenting, because it allowed for me to be, because they still do things often that I'm like, what the actual fuck are you thinking? But I don't say that to them.
Yeah.
Instead, I call my dad and I'm like, Dad, how did you take these phone calls? How are you still taking my phone calls? Like, I've just, for 40 plus years, you've been listening to me just spout out whatever. And he's like, who am I to judge you? You know, like you've had to go through what you've needed. And my dad certainly had some opinions along the way, but
Of course. As you have with yours.
yeah, but he's, for the most part.
But you're stuck at taking your kids' kills.
Yeah. And so what it does is when they do those things, it actually brings me closer to understanding the people that I was so resentful towards or thought should have been better. So it's this building of tolerance and acceptance and unconditional love, and then massive amounts of forgiveness and letting go and moving on. It's just like a really awesome experience.
Yeah. Wearing the armor of yesterday's war serves no one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No one. It's just like, why? You're literally weighing yourself down.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah.
And it's like,
end up sick and tired.
You will, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can go so much further if you're so much lighter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So why are you? And I say that as someone who weighed myself down.
Yeah.
For way too long.
Yeah. Well, we do that. We're so hard on ourselves.
Just that Chris Williamson champions it. I don't know if he's the author of it, but there's the magic you are looking for is on the other side of the work you are avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's if there's something in my life that I know I need to do and I'm reluctant to do it, I try to do it first now.
Yeah.
I try to lean into it.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I would be afraid of something. I would lean into the fear. Oh, I'm afraid of that? Fuck, I'm going to go do it. No,
Yeah.
I'm afraid of anything.
Yeah.
And that kind of like developed this like resilience. But now it's like, why am I so reluctant to do something? And then I just make sure I do it. And there's usually one, it's either not nearly as difficult as I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
2, learned lessons that never knew I needed to learn. And 3, there was rewards on the other end of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's so much benefit.
So much.
To doing the work. That why was I so resistant to doing the work? Or like things that like I was...
We're so comfortable and the brain wants to like be lazy and comfortable and not do... That sounds... Mm-hmm. Right. And it requires having to feel those uncomfortable emotions that come with it. And that's painful, again, to the brain, that like that survival part of our brain of like, stay safe here and to grow or evolve. Even for me to come on, just being here, speaking on a podcast, so uncomfortable.
You have a podcast.
I know. People say that. I actually interviewed my best friend last week and I was like, why am I nervous?
It is so much easier to be on this side of the table.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it is just wild to me to witness myself in ways where I'm like, oh, that's so, like, just all this noise that you make up about to do it, like what it means, like what it's going to feel like. And you don't even know what it's going to feel like. But what it does ultimately is just like, gives me more capacity to feel those feelings.
Yeah.
And to feel into maybe it's stress or the fear, whatever those emotions are that come up, self-doubt, to embrace them and experience them. And then you can do it more and more and more because you're going to have to anyway. That's what the whole thing is here. Like
doing this podcast has become a way of feeding my soul that I never before knew would be possible. That. Because I get to sit across from someone in a way that we're meant to be. This is how we are designed to communicate without distractions, without like real drop-ins, talking about deep topics, talking about, well, how was your day? Right? Mm-hmm. Not surface level bullshit. And I'm fascinated by the origin stories and the pivot points because when people share those parts of their story, they will recount events of joy or trauma or love or compassion in a way that I never would. Mm-hmm. And in hearing them use that language or provide that vantage point or provide that framework, it allows me to see circumstances and scenarios in a way that I never otherwise would. Mm-hmm. And then I can take those lessons and apply them to my own life.
Right. Yeah, the
and
perspective.
That's been beautiful.
Yeah. There's so much power in hearing other people's stories.
Yeah, because as soon as you hear someone else talk about a time where they were human, it gives you permission to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's profound. I wouldn't give that
up for anything.
Yeah, it's really profound. It's just, it is funny because I do this all day, every day with people. I was doing it in my dressing room for 10 years. That's why I was like, well, we'll just go on a podcast and talk about your, individual struggle and experience so that others feel less alone in their experience of that. But then when it comes time to being the person in that seat, it's almost like not you, me. I almost forget like even my own story, my own life, like who I am. It's like I'm being questioned on something that I'm like, I don't think I know the answer. Like, wait, what? It's
But
who
isn't
you are.
it both nice to know that you do know the answer and to also be empowered by the story itself?
Yeah, and I think too, for me, it's an opportunity to just like not be so hard on myself in this expectation that I have of myself. Like going back to that column I wrote or that blog post about like, I need the world to think I've got it all together. I need to have the right answers. I need to be called, for so long we've been like, oh, experts. And so when I brought up Tribeza calling me their expert, at the time I was like, sure, whatever. I didn't think about it. And it wasn't until later I was like, oh my God, please don't call me an expert, like ever. I have experiences, but I'm not an expert. And for a long time, that held me back from showing up because I felt like I at one time I would need to be in the seat and tell you the 10 things that you need to do and have solution and have an answer to make everything better and have it memorized and sound smart and put together. And that has prevented me from being able to show up for anyone. And I would just shut down. And now I'm able to embrace, like, I don't have the answers. I'm not an expert. I have this experience. And there's so much value in all of our experiences, whether it's for one person or 100 people.
There is an improperly... I suffer from this myself because in my work life, I am a threat management expert who does expert witness testimony. And so when people started calling me an expert or I started referring to myself as an expert, it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Until I actually understood what expert means. Because we have it, and I had this myself, that like expert is someone who knows it all. And that's not what it is at all. All an expert is someone who has the training, the background, the education, or the experience to know more than the common man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the definition of an expert.
And the ability to communicate those
It doesn't
things.
mean I know everything.
Right.
It doesn't mean security is a vast world of which I know this really small part of it really well because I've been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So last year I was invited to speak to a group of women at this private club. And I was like, well, God, they didn't say they wanted me to talk about anything specific. And I was like, what? But they wanted it to be about like sex and whatnot. So I was like, how do I walk into a room with 25, 30 women or something and talk about sex in a way that it's going to like touch and resonate with everyone in the space? And I was like, I felt stumped, frankly, because I wanted to please everyone in that room. And I'm probably using like all the words right now since I'm talking about sex. But I was like, yeah, I want to please everybody in here, but just make everyone happy. And I go into the space and the woman introduces me and then she's like, this is Ashley Kelsch. She's a sexpert. And I just felt all of their eyes on me like, oh, great. Another woman who's going to tell us everything we need. Like, we're so tired of being told what we need to know or do. Right? That's just how I felt.
Right. Because that's the story in your head.
In my head.
In the head of the audience, most of whom aren't having sex, or at least are having bad sex, they're like, thank God, please tell me something that will help make my life worth living.
Right. Well, but what I said was, I was like, hi, no, I was like, I am Ash Kelsch. I'm not an expert at having sex. I am an expert at having sex with myself. And so today I would like to talk to you about a pleasure practice and how you can learn to come into your own body. And that felt more like genuine and real to me. Just to be like, I'm an expert with what I've been through and my experiences. I can't guarantee what I'm doing for me is going to work for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not an expert of all things. Here's an area where I have expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, if you're getting hacked, I'm probably not your guy unless best I can do is tell you to change your password.
Yeah.
Right. Or tell you like if it's really easy to hack your Fitbit, it's really difficult to hack your bank account. And if you're using the same username and password for one as you are for the other, you just gave them keys to the kingdom. That's the end of my expertise when it comes to cybersecurity.
Right.
Maybe get behind a VPN if you're in China. That's it.
Yeah.
Like if you want to know how someone created a code to blah, 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 not your guy.
Not your guy.
Not your guy.
Yeah.
You want to know which camera is best? I'm like, no, you need a camera. I don't know which one's best.
Yeah.
But something's better than nothing.
Yeah. I appreciate
But
that.
if there's someone who's like on the pathway to violence or a predator or stalking or blackmailing, call me.
You're on that.
That's my bread and butter.
Yeah.
I live for that.
Yeah. One thing that I've identified that I am good at is I hold great space for people to be able to share what they are thinking and feeling that they would not maybe otherwise share with other people. And it typically does revolve around like their sexuality and relationships and those experiences. And I'm able to give a perspective that they wouldn't have otherwise found. And that I know that about me. Like I from feedback, this is why people call me. This is why people reach out to me. And that's a gift. And I'm grateful that I have that. Because what it is I'm not judging this person and their experience. And I think from being in a dressing room for over 10 years, listening to thousands of women and men talk about their experiences around sexual education, around first time buying a bra, around their first time being intimate with someone, of what's going on in their marriage, their desires, their loss of desire, their divorces. Mm-hmm. I've heard so much. And I heard so much because I listened. And when asked, it wasn't an answer or a solution. It was another question, right? And then if asked what I've done, there's a shared perspective that's been different. And I've been someone who's been living, as much as I want to say, maybe at times impulsively, very honestly for what I want and who I am. And I'm grateful for that because it has shown other people too, like whatever your truth is. Like I walked away from a marriage in the huge house and a lot of money because I knew with every into my marrow that I wasn't in love with this person. And regardless of whatever that life might look like, it wasn't honest and authentic to who I was going to be. And I didn't understand at the time when women were like, "You're leaving that house?" I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And that's not to say people shouldn't, be responsible and plan and take care of yourself when if you're exiting something or when you're deciding to live your truth. But for me, it was like, no, that's not my truth. That's not that's not who I am.
Remaining in integrity or staying in integrity and being in choice.
Yeah.
It's
huge.
If you're not in that, you're not gonna be grounded.
Yeah. And opening up a sex toy shop and lingerie store at a time when people were like, "What?" And following a dream. And I was very naive. I didn't know what I was doing, which is a beautiful thing. That's the gift of youth and experiences. You don't know what you're up against and you go for it because you have no idea.
So much of my success has been that I am smart enough to know that I can figure it out, but dumb enough to not realize how hard it's going to be.
Yes, I love all that. And that's the part of as I'm getting older, that I do want to be mindful of, like, don't be impulsive. Don't be, be strategic, but do not lose that instinct that I have, which is a very real instinct to follow my gut and to take that risk. Like, I know that it's in me. And I don't ever want that part of me to die and to listen to that. Like, so I don't think that matters with age, even though age comes with like, oh, just maybe not jump as quickly into the thing, but jump.
Yeah. Do difficult things carefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Be strategic.
I love it.
Yeah.
Actually, I could continue this conversation all day long. I end every podcast by asking my guest 5 questions.
5 questions.
These questions have absolutely nothing to do with anything we've discussed today.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes. No.
Question number 1.
Go.
Aliens, fact or fiction?
Ooh, I want to say fact.
Love it. Like little green men up in the air, or like at Area 51 or walking among us, or?
All of it. I just do love the visual of like these little green Martians.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. And their helmets are fun.
Helmets are fun. Question number 2. You can go into the jungle. You can pick any animal and shrink it down to the size of your hand so that you can take it home as a pet. What is it going to be?
A screaming monkey.
A screaming monkey?
Yeah.
No one's ever given that answer before.
I just think they're kind of funny.
I like it.
Earlier, I'm like, don't yell. That little screaming monkey would be so cute.
Greta Gerwig, the director, is making a movie about your life. Who is she casting to play you?
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have to say Angelina Jolie, Maleficent. It's a vibe.
If there are people to portray you, why not one of the most beautiful women in the world? Question number 4. What is a piece of art or a book or a movie or a song that as soon as you heard it had an impact on your life, that changed it in a way forever? And what was it?
Hard to dial that down to one.
It can be anyone. Different things have impacted me over the course of my life.
Yeah. Hey from Pixies, the first time I heard it. Because it's that same feeling every time I hear it today.
And what is that feeling?
There's just this primitive energy that comes through my body. I just, it's a very, like this sexual rawness of that song that I feel when I hear it, that like, I couldn't have labeled that at 14 when I heard it, but just the way he's just like, hey, and it just caught my attention, and then been dying to meet you. And it's just this like, that I feel when I hear it still, like this primitive, just, I love it.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
Question number 5. If you could spend 2 weeks in any fictional universe, where would it be?
In space.
So it's a fictional universe. So would you want to be like in the Star Wars world, or would you want to be like in the Star Trek world, or would you want to be in like the
if I'm going to be specific, we'll bring it back down.
So it's a fictional universe.
Yeah.
So a world which has been depicted in a book or a TV.
Yeah.
Movie.
So like I was just like puttering around in my own little like, galactical.
There are plenty of examples of space, but whose version of space do you want to live in?
I'm going to bring it back down to earth into the rainforest, like Fern Gully. And I have wings and I can fly around.
Yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Ashley Kelsch, ladies and gentlemen, if people would like to learn more, where is the best place for them to go?
I have a Substack that I write.
Yes, you do.
I do. And it's called Unfucking Midlife. And that's where like all my stuff is, all my thoughts.
Your Instagram is also Unfucking Midlife?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there a website?
There is a website, and all of that would be, it's ashleykelsch.com. And you can find my Substack and my Instagram on there, I'm sure.
We will put it all in there.
Amazing.
Like, share, subscribe.
Yes.
Thank you very much. You were
Thank
awesome.
you.
Cheers.
Cheers.